All right. Before I start, I want to start by playing a little game. It's called Who Said It. So it's where I say a quote said by a famous person in history, and you have to guess who said the quote. So the quote is, "All of our problems are the result of overbreeding among the working class. Knowledge of birth control is essentially moral. Its general, though prudent practice must lead to a higher individuality and ultimately to a cleaner race."
Hitler.
John Kennedy.
Now, out of these four people, who do you think said this? A, Kim Jong-un, B, Donald Trump, C, Margaret Sanger, or D, Adolf Hitler? All right, who says A? Kim Jong-un. No one? All right, Donald Trump, D? Of course. C, Margaret Sanger. All right, how about Hitler? Who says Hitler?
Support man.
All right. The person who said this is Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, in her article, Morality and Birth Control, published February 1918. Hi, my name is Gabe Parnell, and today I want to briefly talk to you about abortion and how its legalization affects society and how people think and act. By the end of this speech, I hope you all have a better understanding of how women are affected by abortion, Planned Parenthood history, and the rights that human fetuses deserve, and how these laws affect society as a whole. And who makes up over 50% of society? Women. I believe quite often women are underestimated and are thought of as weaker than men, but what could be more powerful than the ability to create another life? So, it makes me feel a little pissed off when this ability is dumbed down as an inconvenience on the women and will make their life worse, when in fact there is evidence that aborting a human fetus does more harm than good for the women in question. According to Brittany Raymer, author of Emotional Challenges in Abortion Complication Series, research shows that women can experience regret, guilt, distress, anxiety, grief, loss, emptiness, and suffering shortly after abortion. Raymer also states that the overall rates of mental health problems with women who have had abortions are 1.5 times higher than those who have not had an abortion, and about 13 to 41% of women who've had abortions experience some level of depression and low self-esteem, as well as substance abuse of alcohol and other illegal drugs. But it's not just the women's mental well-being that could be in jeopardy. According to a study in Finland, nearly 75% of women who visited Planned Parenthood fall at or below 150% of the poverty level. This means if the national poverty level is $15,000 a year, for example, then 75% of women who visited Planned Parenthood end up making $22,500 a year or less. Now that we've analyzed how abortions can affect the well-being of women, let's take a look on the history of Planned Parenthood. So remember when we played the little game in the beginning and we saw how Margaret Sanger said that one quote? Well, if we're to understand the history of Planned Parenthood, we should take a look at the person who started it all. Margaret Sanger, born Margaret Higgins on September 14, 1879 in Corning, New York, was one out of 11 children. Her mother, Anne Higgins, had several miscarriages, which Margaret believed contributed to her early death at the age of 40. Margaret attended Claveret College and Hudson River Institute in 1896 and went on to study nursing 4 years later. In 1910, Sanger moved to New York City and begun her campaign to inform women about sex, and in 1916 opened the first birth control clinic in the U.S. Today, Sanger is revered as a social justice icon among women, but what many people don't acknowledge is Sanger's motives for legalizing abortion. She is on record of saying her motives for legalizing abortion are to eliminate people she deemed defective, and in a letter she sent to Dr. Clarence Gamble in 1939, she stated, "We don't want the word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population." Gross. She also explains in her autobiography how she gave speeches to women in the KKK and preached her ideologies to similar hate groups. Though Planned Parenthood does provide women with contraceptives, it does not excuse the murder of countless human babies. According to Joshua Denton in Abortion Life News, Planned Parenthood is responsible for the death of over 300,000 babies, and in 2017, bringing the Planned Parenthood kill count to a whopping 7.6 million. That's 1 million more victims than the number of Jews that were executed in the Holocaust, another result of a person believing some people were unfit for life. So we've gone over how abortions affect women and the history of Planned Parenthood. Now, let's take a look on the rights of unborn babies and the rights that they deserve. According to Title 28, Chapter 379, Section 407 of Florida statutes, I'd be charged with a felony if I were to go out into the swamps and stomp on a bunch of alligator eggs. Keep in mind, there are over 5 million alligators spread out amongst the U.S., and for a species to be considered endangered, there has to be a population size of 2,500 or less. But when a woman for one reason or another aborts a viable human fetus, she is revered as brave and empowered. I mean, I would also feel pretty powerful if I was curb stomping a bunch of helpless baby alligators and eggs, but that is only because it will one day grow up to be a 500-pound monster that will sooner rip me in half than look at me. It is not only immoral but illogical that an animal fetus has more rights than a human fetus. Some advocates for abortion bring up the point that since the baby has no birth certificate, it is not considered a citizen, and therefore it does not qualify for constitutional rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, that does make sense, I'll give them that. So what about undocumented immigrants? Is it legal for me to go out and shoot Alex in the head? Or John? No, of course not. Though non-citizens obviously don't qualify for all constitutional rights, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in Zadvius versus Davis that once an alien enters the country, the legal circumstance changes, for the Due Process Clause applies to all persons within the United States. For those of you who don't know, the Due Process Clauses can be found in both the 5th and 14th Amendment and acts as a safeguard from denial of life, liberty, or property. Now, how can we in good conscience protect the rights of unborn, non-endangered animals and illegal immigrants, but not human fetuses because they are not people and not citizens? We can. And that is why it is absolutely necessary to change this law. How do we do this? By marching down to Capitol Hill and demanding abortions be made illegal or else. Now, that's obviously pretty severe. So instead, if you feel it is necessary and you agree with me, sign a petition to end funding for Planned Parenthood. All right. Thank you for letting me talk to you today, and have a good day. And remember, in the words of Dr. Seuss, a person's a person, no matter how small.